Hello and a very warm welcome to the SEO Mindset podcast, where your hosts are myself, Sarah McDowell, and my fabulous co-host and absolute Zen Queen, that is the nickname that she is getting, Tazmin Suleman, with episodes going out every single Thursday. This week, we're doing things a little differently. That usual podcast format that we have is going out the window this week, but it's going out the window for a very good reason. On Wednesday, the 9th of April, the night before Brighton SEO, we did a live podcast recording, which was a collaboration with our dear friend, Jack Chambers-Ward, who hosts the Search with Candour podcast. Search with Candour is a great podcast that I seriously urge you to go and check out. I'll make sure that I pop a link in our show notes. So that's right, we recorded an episode in front of a live audience, and the topic was all about personal branding. It was such a lovely evening to actually be in front of our audience. And what's really special about a live podcast is the fact that we could do a Q&A. We could interact with our audience on the podcast. So it was such a great conversation and a great evening to connect, chat with other people, not just on the podcast recording itself, but around the podcast recording as well during the event. Shout out to our wonderful headline sponsor, which is of course Sistrix. They provided us with insightful data on the topic of personal branding, which helped us to shape the episode and the conversation for the night. So huge thanks to Sistrix, and also thanks to our food sponsor Majestic and drink sponsor Sightbulb. This event would not be possible without their support, so a massive thank you to all of our sponsors. Before I play you the live podcast for you to enjoy, just a heads up that we ran into a few technical issues while recording on the night. So the audio might sound a little peculiar in places. Our voices may sound a little bit weird. Now, huge shout out to Jack, who worked some serious magic behind the scenes to clean it up the best he could so we could still get it out to you. He spent his whole weekend fixing that audio so we could still share the episode. So thanks for bearing with us. We promise it's still worth the listen. We just wanted to give you that caveat. Are you ready to listen to the live podcast recording and learn more about personal branding? Of course you are. So let's get stuck in.
Hello, everybody. That's always fun. If you didn't already know, this is our 5th live podcast event, which is it. Cheers. What a lovely audience. And yeah, essentially, this is a crossover between me representing Search with Candour and these two lovely people representing the SEO Mindset podcast. And essentially, we're going to talk about how to build your personal brand, which is very exciting. Quick round of applause for the topic. Before we get to topics and things like that, I'll pass it over to Tazmin here in the middle to talk a little bit about the SEO mindset, introduce the podcast to everybody, and then we'll get in and we'll thank our sponsors and talk about all the exciting things going on around the podcast, and we'll get into the topic in 2 minutes. Tazmin, over to you.
So I don't know if everyone knows that the SEO Mindset podcast turns 3 tomorrow on Thursday. Do you get a cake?
I think so, yeah, that's the rule.
Okay. But a little bit about it. So Sarah and I started this podcast because we really wanted to help the SEO community with topics around career growth and well-being. So we are super excited to be continuing to do it. And Ian is one of it. And the episodes go out every Thursday. I think tomorrow's one is on meditation.
Yes, so it's about meditation.
And we had listeners in 170 countries that we are 60 happy.
and souped up these in the audience. We have a lot of them. Been on the podcast as well. So that's the podcast.
If you're not familiar with the Search with Canada podcast, then it goes out every single Monday morning, and it's either me interviewing, again, many familiar faces in this room have been on the podcast, the best and brightest in SEO. I see, hello, thank you. Or it's me and my co-host Mark Williams Goats down in the corner here. Good little word of and we recap the SEO news for the month, essentially. And I think we're 6 years now until we had a bit of a break before I took over. But yeah, we're 6 years until we started in 2019. So yeah, we do that every single week. It goes out on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the usual places. You might get a little card later on that you can scan, subscribe. Both sides, one for SEO Mindset, one for Search with Canada. You can go and check out. You've got a playlist, right?
We've got a bit organised this time, and you see on the there's 2 QR codes, and because we've got a shed load of episodes, like over 100, or is it more?
Under the 35?
Yeah, we thought we need a smart way to organise them all so people can easily browse and see what they want to listen to. So we have created a self-care playlist, which will come in very handy during Brighton SEO because, you know, cover lots of different topics in there. So go and have a look at that playlist and, you know, listen to it before the conference. And then we've also put together a playlist of our most popular guest episodes as well.
You're putting some faces in the crowd. I've seen the list. Of course, this wouldn't be possible without our amazing sponsors. Our headline sponsor is Systrix. Could get a round of applause for Systrix.
We are inviting the Steve up for it.
Indeed. Mr. Payne, would you like to come? Yes, it is, yeah. Come and deal with your personal brand, Steve.
So, bit of context here. So, no, you can come up. So, Steve at Systrix has helped us shape tonight. And, I mean, you talk about the data. You talk about how you helped us.
Well, first, I just want to say welcome, everyone. It's lovely to see a lovely full house again, same as last year. I'm pleased to tell your friends this is a lovely, warm intro to Brighton SEO. I think you all agree. Spread the word, make this an even bigger event last time. We'll be happy to join with the other sponsors, Majestic and Sitebol. Actually, they deserve a grand applause. We did very quietly enable, I know this is a bit of a salesy thing, but we enabled a secret QR code. There's 2 guys sitting over there. We enabled a 14-day free trial with no credit card. You know, everyone's put their credit card sort of wall into it. You know, it's those 2 over there. They've got with QR code. So if you haven't tried, there's probably no one that hasn't tried Systrix here, right? Onward. Data. Where's YouTube going off? That camera, is it? You're right. Hello, YouTube. Did you know that around the term brand building, there are 6,000 searches per month in the UK? That's around the term. That's including all the sort of related terms. In the US, it's double that. If you think about the population, that means there's more searches per head in the UK around this topic than there is in the US. And that surprised me, because I would have thought that in the US, it would have been a bigger thing, right? Personal brand building, I mean, they are rather good experts at that. There's one from New York here. Am I right? It's a big thing in the US. Personal brand building is a big thing. So I'm surprised to see there's more per head searches per month around this topic. So it's an important topic. I brought some data as well. There's a few questions. All years, it's really weird, the top questions that come out. I should have actually asked Mike for the top questions, Steve. Could you put what happened? Right, the top questions are, of course, why is a person brand? I think you know to talk about that, right? And then, I haven't got my glasses on, I think just about really. Where's Ali? All right. I've got my glasses on, sorry. Right, so what is it though? How to build your personal brand? That's the top question. what is a personal brand? Okay, you can talk about that tonight. That's excellent. And then the next three were, what are the 5 A's of personal branding? What are the 4 P's of personal branding? And what are the 5 C's of personal branding? So I think someone's done a bit of marketing on the whole personal branding thing and tried to put out these sort of by P's and C's. So maybe you can look.
Don't worry, I've got the 5 CAQRS's covered.
I have no idea what that is. The other interesting thing I thought was that there was a peak around Q3 last year in the UK of searches, which coincides with the Harvard Business Review writing an article, a very long article, which is the top URL. It is a new approach to building your personal brand. And I think that article was marketed and has boosted the search volume for it. Unless you can find another reason why that went up in Q3 last year, I can't think. Can anyone else think? Maybe there was something on Zigbee? I don't know, the hop happens, there's something on TV and then...
An influencer, the hit social.
Redundancies.
What was it?
Redundancies. So everyone's trying to personal.
Yeah.
So all the SEO going, shit, I need to build my personal brand. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm around later and let's get on with these lovely people.
Thank you.
Tracy, any up? No. Are you cystic by the socks with the little search icon and the Cistrix logo there as well? You may do this. Another one from our lovely sponsor at Majestic. And I see they're about Majestic. It's a Majestic repower deck. We'll be giving away copies of SEO in 2025 during the Q&A section. So if you ask a question, we give you a mic. You can get a copy of SEO in 2025.
And you're in that book.
I am. The odd few places in the ground are. It does some here.
That's a common theme.
Got a star-studded throughout. And we thank Majestic for the food. So all of your pizzas and with snacks and things, thanks to Majestic. Base of the drinks is from lovely Side Bowl. Be around for Side Bowl team. Thank you, Side Bowl. Hopefully you both enjoyed the drinks. Alcoholic, non-alcoholic, all that kind of stuff. And after we finish, there'll be plenty of time to have more drinks and food and all that kind of stuff as well. So don't worry about that. We also want to thank this venue, Projects, which is this amazing room we've been in 5 times now. We kind of looked into this room, it feels like. I'm like, oh, wow.
Back your home.
Yeah, it feels like it looks like a UFO or something. It's very, very high tech. So yeah, huge shout out to Projects for giving in this lovely venue. Silicon Brighton helped connect us with the venue and make everything happen. We're streaming on the YouTube channel right now. Hello, Silicon Brighton on the YouTube side of things. And speaking of video and stuff, shout out to Cameron on the AB in the back there. Book Andreas at cat there. Sussing out by going up with 2 extra cameras earlier and just freaking out. So you've been handling it like a champion. Thank you, Cameron. And a big shout out to Crystal right sat in the middle of the deck who's been helping out with us.
So we take the pistol.
Please do.
So your pistol is doing a talk tomorrow. Right, SEOs. 1 and 2. So definitely go and check. You're talking all social stuff, aren't you?
Crystal clear social media approach.
The crystal clear social media approach. That's how you get about the mouse. I like pine detail. Like that.
For example, the personal brand do. And it is just
Absolutely your personal brand like that, Chris. Put your name at your talks. You build a new personal brand. And you mentioned a question earlier. The uniform topic is how to build your personal brand. But the first question is, what is a personal brand? And Sarah, I'm going to pass it over to you to get the actual podcast bit started.
do only get to game first.
You do.
What an honour. What an honour. So I am going to go back to what Steve has already said about how everyone has a theory, everyone has a concept that you can adapt, whether that's the 5 A's, 5 C's, 3 P's. They're going to have done every letter in the alphabet, really. But I would like to talk about the 5 C's and the 5 A's, because when I looked at them, they kind of made sense to me, and I sort of resonated, and they made sense when I was reading through. So, about the question on everyone's lips is, Sarah, please tell us what the 5 C's are. Right? Of course. Okay, so your 5 C's are consistency, creativity, clarity, commitment, and consultation.
Ooh.
Right? Those are your 5 C's, which are quite straightforward. So consistency, you've got to be consistent, you've got to show up regularly, but also consistently with your message. Then we've got your creativity. So there's a lot of noise out there. You've got to stand out. You've got to be creative. What's your flair? What makes you stand out? How can you be creative to attract your tribe and get that audience? Then you've got clarity. And this is a tricky one. And actually, me, Crystal, and Tazmin were talking about this last night, because we're all staying together, which is very awesome and lovely. But it's super important to be clear, have clarity on not only your personal brand, but what you stand for and what you sell and what you want to, and who you want to attract. And I think clarity is possibly the most important one. So I think it underpins everything else. So once you've got that clarity, once you're clear on what it is that you want to do, who you want to attract, all of that lovely stuff, all the other things, it's like a jigsaw, is how I envisioned it. It all goes together nicely. And then commitment. So how I saw commitment was commitment to yourself, yeah, but also commitment to the people that you want to show up for. So before I go on to my 5 A's, let's talk about the C's. What resonated? Anything?
So I guess we're on, and I'm going to talk about it when it's my turn. All of these 5 A's and 5 B's and 5 C's and 5 D's and all of the rest of it is great for marketing. But when you've just spoken about clarity and commitment, it is reputation and it is integrity. And we've created this buzzword of personal brand. But it back in the day, it's reputation. And that's what it boils down to. It is, what is your reputation? And yes, there was a way of now looking at what you want to attract in your career, how you want to build it, and how do you showcase yourself in order to get the best opportunities. But when you really boil it down, to have authentic personal brand, it has to be yourself. It's who you are, what you stand for, what your integrity is like. And it's not just about building it, it's about being it.
Definitely, and that does, sorry to take 5 A's, but what if 5 A's, it's authenticity. It is authenticity. And a lot that comes up in our podcast, in all our episodes, authenticity, but also self-awareness, being self-aware. And it's really easy to say, everyone should be self-aware, everyone should be authentic, but it's really hard nailing it and knowing what you do, which is why I think it then leads back to clarity, because once you have a crystal clear, thank you, Crystal, thank you, idea of that, then that's where your authenticity comes, your reputation, and that's where you know as a person who you are and what you want to do. And just to quickly get into the other A's, you've got authority.
Sarah, go on.
Authority, aspiration, affinity. I always think of, what is it? Sorry, affinity of and appearance. So, but appearance is important because you have to show up. And that goes into commitment, doesn't it? Like, personal brand is all about getting yourself out there. And the only way that you're going to get out there is by actually appearing, your appearance in what you do. So those are the 5 C's and 5 A's. And then I did also just want to touch on the ick. So what was really funny, I'm going to be very transparent and open, but when we launched this event, I was messaging connections about it, like, how come we can talk about personal branding? And 9 times out of 10, 90%, I got a good reaction, and people came and said lovely stuff. And there was one person who was like, word gives me the ick, Sarah. Makes me feel queasy. So this is a strong reaction. Do we need to rethink the whole live podcast? But I thought, hang on a minute. The whole thing about personal branding is yourself and what feels right with you. So if you are getting the ick, if you're getting something that makes you feel queasy, you're obviously just doing something that's not right for you. And you're probably doing something because someone else has told you to do it. Or you jump you on a trend because you're like, disability, appearance, I'm going to do that, I think, because everyone else is. But deep down, like, it doesn't sit right with me. And I generally think you can build your personal brand, and you should build your personal brand, and you can do it without feeding the ick. If you're self-aware, if you know what you want to do, and being able to say yes and no to stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of that reputation thing you mentioned, Tazmin, where I hate to quote Jeff Bezos because not the best. I know, right? Yeah, which is quite a good quote. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So there's an element there of being conscious about it and being active and being aware of like who you are, what you represent, and all that kind of stuff. But what do people actually think about you when you aren't there and they're having conversations like, I just saw Jack and oh God, what was he thinking? What's going on? Why is he wearing a Jurassic Park shirt? What a weirdo. Like, there's a real kind of thing there of you can be as aware and conscious and put as much effort in as you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take away the bright message. And that comes back around to clarity as well, right? When you're thinking about the way you're conveying your message and the kind of audience you're speaking to, it matters the way you say things because people interpret things in different ways. And I had definitely got away from a brand or a meeting or a podcast or whatever it is. I mean, like, I completely misunderstood what these guys represent. I thought we were aligned in this way. Turns out we are not aligned at all, or we should not be working together or whatever. And then I've also gone the other way and I'm like, oh God, this is giving an absolute slog. And then get on really well with somebody. And I've always been surprised at how that kind of thing happens almost accidentally. And you make the 6A is accidental brand building.
You can add to the 5 A's, or you can create you one if you want.
Yeah, now it's the 6 A's. There we go. I was talking to my wife the other day, funny enough, and she just got a new job. And I'm helping her to go through sort of like CV building and all that kind of stuff. And I had this conversation about personal branding with my wife, who's a nurse, who could not care less about marketing or podcasting or anything like that. But I was like, how do you represent yourself and your career experiences on your CV? And for me, a lot of it can be the thing that will separate you from a million other job applicants. I don't know if you guys I would mention redundancies earlier, unfortunately, but a lot of people are moving jobs and looking for new jobs at the moment. You get 200, 300, 500 applicants per job. And I've been in hiring positions before where you'll get essentially the same qualifications, essentially the same experiences, give or take. And it's actually the way they kind of present themselves in the little extra bits, the hobbies, the interests, that'll, on the side, I'm a photographer, or I do this, or I have built a website, there's my personal thing, or whatever. For me, that have to be a differential between, and does the seem similar on paper. And I think a lot of people build the personal brand or don't even realize it, basically. And my wife was like, oh yeah, I do kind of stand for this and do this, and people know me for this. Well, yeah, you have a reputation.
That's a lovely way to do it, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You, by accident, build a personal brand, because that just means that you're doing the right things and is attracting the right people.
That was iBrook, essentially, that was.
What was your experience been like, Tazmin? Because I know you've been freelancing for a long time. You're a life coach, you're a podcaster, all kinds of stuff. Was your a bit more conscious and a bit more direct, or was it kind of accidental?
I didn't even know that there was a thing, personal brand when I started, but I just want to add a little bit to what we've just been talking about. Yes, you can intentionally build your personal brand by going and delivering a talk, or writing a blog, or writing this, or posting here. But you're also building your personal brand in other places as well. The way I coach my clients, that's building my personal brand. So if anybody, and there are a few of my clients here, if they were approached saying, oh, looking for this really high speed, high energy coach, they're going to say, Taz, it's not your person, because I'm not that person. If you're Zen Queen, I call it the Zen Queen.
Right, the Zen Queen.
If you're in a position where you are having to tell someone that they're being made redundant, the way you handle that conversation is building a personal brand. So it's a bit like an impressionist painting. Every little interaction you have is framing that personal brand that you're building. And I think that's sometimes what we lose focus of, because we've got the 5 A's and B's and Z's and all the rest of it. It is your character. What is your character? Because then that stems into personal brand. But in terms of how did I build it, I didn't know what personal brand was. I never even thought about it. When Hannah and Arij asked me to do the workshop for Women in Tech, how to build a personal brand, I said, Hannah, I don't know anything about this. And she said, well, you must do, because you built one. And I had to
Your website has me, you definitely go back.
I did think a bit like that. I never ever thought of it. And when I worked back retrospectively, I thought, oh, we didn't know I jobbed there, because that's who you are. I decided to pivot my career because I wanted to do something different in life. And I molded that career around what I wanted my life to look like. And for those who know me really well, know that I am molding my career around what I want my retirement to look like. Because I know I will never want to start working.
You're never leaving the podcast, are you? Tell us a bit.
Maybe 5 years, you could find me. But I know that when I retire, I want my life to look in a certain way. And at that time, I can then adjust my coaching, adjust the podcasting to be around that. So that's how I created it. And by, good fortune, the podcast and the coaching align. And I just show up as me. So you asked me yesterday, you nervous? No, I just show up as me. And that's okay. I don't need to be like anyone else. I don't need to be, high intensity or super. I just say the words that are Tazmin's words, and I'm really fortunate that seems to work for me. Retrospectively, I think I could have been more intentional if I'd known what a personal brand was and built me one, and maybe I'd made different choices to get to where I got to quicker. But apart from that's been my experience.
I think that's a common experience. I know quite a few people in this industry and crowd are like going freelance at the moment, right? And I'm speaking to you guys, have been working freelance. I know you made the jump last year, Sarah. Has that experience shifted the way you think about your customer? What has your experience been around going from working companies and stuff to actually representing yourself directly?
So it's a bit of an odd one for me, because I think unknowingly I have been building a personal brand, but it has been not knowing that it's a personal brand, but I have been building and being intentional about connections, conferences that I'm going to, what I want to do. So with me being intentional and working on my personal brand behind the scenes, that then allowed me to step into freelancing, because I got to a point where I had enough connections, I had a big enough, don't want to come across as big-headed here, but I'm just going to go for it. Imposter syndrome is screaming out right now. But yeah, I built up enough connections. I started to make a name for myself, especially the podcasting space, SEO podcasting space. People were sort of recommending me, and I think that was through just helping people, really. And if someone had a question or they wanted to launch a podcast, I was, I'll help you. Let me do this. We'll do this together. And I think they got to a point where the massive driver for me going freelance was partly, I think, there's a little bit of me that's always a bit entrepreneurial and always a bit like, oh, I want to try these things. I want to see what happens. But the biggest driver was, I'm very sorry, but I got a bit annoyed at when you look at the top 25% of podcasts. I'm very sorry to say, I'm going to look away from Jack for a moment because it's a lot of white cishet men. Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm fine being the token cishet white guy will hop in. That's fine.
That's great podcasts, and I'm not here yet. But I was just like, there needs to be more diverse voices out there. And I ended up having conversations with a lot of people, and I could tell they would make a cracking podcast because they were passionate or they really felt a way about something, or they were a really good storyteller, but the reason they didn't do it was because of the overwhelm. They didn't know how to do it, the imposter syndrome, the equipment. And then I was like, that's a really easy fix that I can help with. That's easy. I'll sit down with you, figure that out, but we'll get your voice out there. So I think a massive drive for me was, everyone wants to make their change in the world, don't they, I suppose? And that was my thing. I want to get more diverse voices out there. And if I can do that by going freelance, then of course I'm going to do it. And as soon as I embraced me, because I remember when I first got into SEO, so I first got into SEO 2012, so over 10 years now. Yeah, David's eyes. Whenever I say that, lots of people are like, wow, you've been in it for a while. I'm like, yeah, okay. But yeah, when I first got into SEO, I showed up as a weird Sarah. I showed up as like a weird corporate lingo blubbing weird Sarah that gave me the ick. It wasn't right for me. And I was always told that I'm not enough fits, I'm not enough fat. Like, I remember getting feedback once saying, you're not aggressive enough. And I'm like, that's just not me. That's not how I do business. So I think you've got to have the confidence to be self-aware, know yourself, and be okay showing up as that, because then you attract the people that you want, and then you repel people that aren't meant to be for you. But that's okay. I'm okay repelling people who want me to be this aggressive, lingo loving. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to find your tribe. You've got to find your people. So my biggest learning is embrace you, show up how you want, because that is how I made connections. And that is how I built up the big enough reputation to then enable me to go freelance and be able to help get diverse voices out there. So just a little thing, if there's anyone sat in this room right now who's like, do you know what? I think I'd be all right, a podcast. I just need a little helping hand. Talk to me, because we need to get diverse voices out there. But anyway, that's, yeah.
No pitching your business on the socials.
Sorry.
Come on.
Sarah, is that why you picked the cohorts? Or age diversity, height diversity? You take lots of things.
I know what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing.
And we've all got a new Halloween costume of aggressive corporate Sarah McDowell that we can do later on this year.
Yeah.
I literally can't imagine it. It's mad.
This is why it just didn't fit right with me. And when I was trying to be this, the other person was awkward. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this is why it's so important to be you, because then that's how, yeah. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
Similar to you, Tazmin, I think I accidentally stumbled into a bit of a brand. Like when I've been podcasting 2009, I was at university, and it was a real kind of thing of like, hearing your recorded voice for the first time, I think freaks basically everyone out, right? Everyone hates their own voice. 15 years later, I am numb to my own voice. And I bullied myself out of doing all the ums and the ers and the buts and the stalling and all that kind of thing over the years. And I found myself kind of thinking about, I always say it this way, I always word things in a particular way. And recently switching, because we started putting social camera on YouTube at the beginning of last year. On camera stuff is a whole other side of these. And you mentioned appearance earlier, Sarah, like literally, what am I wearing? Exactly. One of the 6 A's, as we discussed. Thank you.
We're like 25.
Let me 4 A's. So I'm sure you'll all go away. Excellent notes. But yeah, there was that element. I literally get comments from people of, oh, we've changed shirt 3 times, because I would record the intro part, then do an ad read in a different t-shirt on a different day, and in the actual interview I'd reported a month ago, so I'd bring a different t-shirt, and I was thinking, does that matter? Do people care? And then I always got comments. I know we've actually gotten people listening to the podcast because either myself or Mark has shared a post, and the banner image is Mark and I with Mark's dog Snoop. Obviously, Snoop is adorable, so he's an excellent lead gen essentially. But also people compliment me on my heavy metal t-shirts, which is a weird thing. But listen to this podcast, you're into Opeth, and I was like, okay, that's weird. How many SEO podcast listeners are also into Swedish death?
Someone that when you did the obligatory praise LP that I love, everyone does on the way to Brighton SEO, but someone complimented you on your t-shirt.
Yeah, I always get comments on my t-shirts and shirts and stuff. It's always become a thing where people will say, oh, I listened to that band or I listened to that thing. And I get nerdy t-shirts like this. Mentioned this, may not notice from the back row, but this is a Jurassic Park t-shirt. You look very close to, there's little velociraptors hidden around, being clever little girls hanging around. I'm not being a creep, that's a reference to the film, I promise. But there's the element of people know me as a big nerd, and I wear it pretty openly on my sleeve. And I think for me that was an element of taking the podcast over from Mark, who had hosted it for 130 plus episodes before. There's going to be a shift. But I was very conscious of trying to continue that kind of momentum and not completely tank it and change it all, but also bring my own style and my own flair to it. And because I had experience talking about nerdy things, comic books and films and all that kind of stuff, I was like, how do I reframe the way I'm going to interview people in the SEO community? How do I do it in the Jack way and not try and just copy what Mark had done previously or what other people had done in other SEO podcasts? And it was a real kind of thing of okay, I'm going to do a bunch of competitor research, analyze all this stuff and see what other people are doing. Or I could just give it a go and see what happens and kind of wing it. And I did a little bit of both, to be honest. It was half accidental, half conscious. And I think it came to the point where I was thinking, okay, I'm in the club now. Funny enough, sat on the front row, Claire Carlisle, shout out to Claire. You're the first person I interviewed on the podcast. A very lovely first guest to have. And it was this real moment of you don't know who I am, you're being very nice, and you're being very friendly and welcoming, all that kind of stuff. Because I posed my other podcast, I'd just been chatting with friends, essentially. It was that gathered on Zoom or in the same room, whatever. It was my first time doing an interview in that way. And the way I presented myself, the way I was writing down questions, people have commented how incredibly detailed my podcast notes are before. Because if I don't take notes, like we've got on these cards, I forget things. My ADHD break kicks in and I forget everything. So people now are thinking he's an organized, nerdy, I try to be funny. Mm-hmm. See how that goes?
You are funny.
I try to. And I think there's that element of what do the people say? Again, multiple people I have interviewed on the show are in this room. What are you guys saying about me when you leave? Oh, God, Jackie was a nightmare. Or, oh, yeah, it was really friendly. He was so welcoming. He had great questions, all that kind of stuff. And thinking about what kind of podcast host I wanted to be was the first time I'd really kind of thought, I need to think about how I'm also representing the brand of Canada and how I'm also representing myself and trying to balance the two and not be aggressive corporate Jack, which, again, wouldn't suit Canada anyway, but find that balance of being funny and kind of not too intense, but also getting in good insights and good interviews.
But you just touched on something really important, because I think sometimes when we think personal brand, we think, okay, so that's for the freelancers or people who have got their own business, and that's where our brain goes. But it is just as important to work on your personal brand if you're in employment, because your personal brand can help you get jobs. My personal brand enabled me to, this is going to sound really sleazy, but I slid into someone's DMs once.
Oh.
Right? And because of my reputation and the personal brand I built, it was really strange because it was a company that I'd always looked up to and wanted to sell.
Oh, it's a company. Okay, right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
We've just got a reputation of sliding into people's DMs.
I mean, my fiance is in the audience right now, so things happen.
Tash is used to it by now.
Anyway, you're derailing my point. But yeah, so, and I basically was just bold, and I obviously did a bit of brown nosing, butted them up, and I asked if there was any jobs going, and it was a good timing, and we'd known each other, done some projects, and we worked bits and bobs together, but didn't really have a job interview. He sent me the job description and was like, does that sound about right, sir? Is that what you want to do? I was like, yes, if that sounds okay. But the point is, personal branding is relevant to everyone because it can help in so many different ways, not just if you're freelance and got your own thing, but even if you're employed, because, yeah, like, it helps you with the company that you're working for, if you want to do speaking gigs, if you want to ever look elsewhere, all that lovely stuff.
I'm going on. So I'm married to an accountant, and the company he's working for now, he didn't even really apply for the job. His boss asked a few people saying, I'm looking for an accountant who is really trustworthy and honest. That's my criteria, so it's characteristic based. And they said, you want to go and see if so-and-so is looking for a job. And that's how he got that role.
It works.
Again, it's what people say when you're not in the room. Right? That comes back.
Even if they hear. And so this person had a perception of my husband's brand, if you want to call it that, before.
We do. That's why we get Tazmin the app.
Before he's even met him. So you don't even have to know the person.
Yeah, definitely. And funnily enough, that's also how I got the job at Canada. Mark slid into my DMs, if you want to put it that way, and said, oh, I've been listening to your film podcast. Why are you saying bad things about Predator 2? I like Predator 2. Would you like to come and do some SEO work for me? And I was like, that's so weird, DM. So, yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's like top 4 Predator movies, probably. Yeah, maybe. We'll have a discussion about that.
This isn't the sequelizers. Come on.
It nearly is. But yeah, there was that element. I didn't even realize, I'd be able to get a job in SEO because I was working at another agency doing sort of general digital marketing stuff, all the paid, all the social, all the organic stuff, and had no idea. I wasn't even looking for a job at the time, but Mark just messaged me out of nowhere like, oh, I listened to your film podcast and I'd like to hire you for a marketing role. I'm like, okay. I think to this day, you've never seen my CV, like ever. So like, yeah, fine, it'll be fine. All worked out, hopefully. I say, as I'm about to get fired. But I unknowingly kind of built a brand, right? I built a thing of, I mentioned on my LinkedIn that I'm working in digital marketing, but I also do podcasting. So there's that kind of unique combination of, we need somebody to come in, help out with the Search for Canada podcast, and also do client work as well. And I kind of unknowingly turned my LinkedIn profile, because for years and years and years, I was just like, my LinkedIn profile's got to be super professional. It's all the stuff I'm actually getting paid for. I then added my film podcast and other stuff that I've never got paid for, just stuff I do on the side. And then I got a job because I put the extracurricular stuff on my LinkedIn profile. Oh yeah, I guess that is relevant. And I mentioned earlier with like CVs and stuff like that, those hobbies, those interests and that kind of thing can be the difference maker between somebody with two very different on paper.
That's just because we're all humans. Humans want to connect with each other. So you and Mark connected through Predator
2. Yeah.
I haven't watched any of them. I'm very sorry. But I think sometimes we forget, even in the business world, humans are just humans. You've got to connect somehow, like find a common ground.
I think we said that a lot in SEO, right? It's always like, don't forget the user on the other end of things. We call them users or clicks or likes or whatever, but there is always a person. Well, sometimes there's not, there's sometimes bots, but there's usually a human on the other end of it. And the whole mantra of like, write for humans and do your content for humans and stuff like that is also true for your LinkedIn profile, for your CV, for your website, whatever it is, so the conversations you have at a conference like Write in SEO. And that's where that comes into making those connections, like you said, Sarah, they might be the connections that allow you to go freelance in the future or get a new job or whatever. And I think that can be a really big, again, that kind of accidental thing. But if you're aware of it at the time, you can almost take note of it and be like, oh yeah, I spoke to so-and-so and I'd actually quite like to work at that company. I know we had this conversation before of like, stalk the companies you might want to work at, see who works there. Oh, they're doing a talk of Brighton SEO. Oh, interesting. I'll go to that talk. You take a photo of them talking on stage and then post that. And they say, oh, yeah, I saw you on LinkedIn. Hey, come and apply for this job. You can make little sneaky connections like that. I mean, I'm not endorsing stalking to build your personal brand. Maybe not.
Yeah, we need to be careful.
No, you're not.
Is sliding.
There's hiding in DMs, stalking. It's a real sleazy podcast also, don't it? It's the sleaze balls on the end here. Poor Tazmin in the middle there.
Maybe a sleazeball.
You were sliding in DMs, mate. You started it.
I started it, but that's not me. Just like I'm an aggressive corporate. I'm not a sleazeball. I'm Sarah. I'm in the middle. Like,
Slizing Sarah. Wow, has a reputation.
quick, right there. Look over there. Let's change the subject.
Anyway, Tazmin, I'll pass to you. Let's actually give some practical tips, shall we? Rather than dirty nicknames to podcast co-hosts.
Oh dear. Moments. Practical tips. So as we said, Sarah was saying about being aware of who you are, what you stand for, what your skills are, all of that is the foundation. Because if you're going to build something authentic, you have to know what that is. And for me, I'm a big fan of journaling. So if you want to understand yourself better, each evening, write in your journal, what happened today? Oh, I wonder why I did that. Well, I wonder why I said that thing when I wish I'd said that thing. Or I wish I'd handled that situation better. Or I'm really happy with how this turned out. Get really curious about yourself. You can get prompts, that works as well, but I find just sometimes just freestyle journaling in the evening can really help you understand. So what I tell, when I started journaling, the biggest problem I had in my life was that I was really angry all the time. And
I can't imagine angry Tazmin. I know we said this before, it's so bizarre. We've got aggressive corporate Sarah and angry Tazmin. Is this an alternate universe? It seems bizarre.
It's like already you had those. I mean, you slept into it.
It is. It must feel like that was a different husband. And I remember writing in it saying, I'm always getting angry with the children and I don't like who I'm becoming. And then I would, and the next time I got angry, I would write down, this thing happened and I said that, Spear said that. This is how I reacted. I wonder why I did that. And slowly I started understanding what the problem was and then started to fix it. So that was my first use of journaling. But now I use it mostly, for lots of things, but my business, like, oh, what's the biggest bottleneck in my business right now? And usually it's fee. All the problems husband, fix it. Or if I had a day like this, every day for 365 days, would I be where I want to be? And if not, what am I going to do about it? So I use journaling a lot for self-awareness. I use the Ikigai. So if anybody wants to get to know themselves better, Ikigai is a lovely way of understanding yourself. There's a free tutorial on there, so come and grab one of those. And that helps you understand what your strengths are, what you like doing, what your skills are, all sorts of things. So that's one tip. Get to know yourself better. And we've talked about relevance and boundaries. So I would start with figure out everything about yourself and put it in one big circle. That's you. And inside that circle, draw a smaller one. And that's your circle of relevance. Let's call it circle of authenticity. Get this vet shop, one of your searches one day. Circle of authenticity inside circle of relevance. Now, this is Tazmin, and some people in here know that Tazmin really likes cleaning kitchens. I get so much ease and joy from cleaning kitchens. However, I'm not in the business of cleaning kitchens. Therefore, that does not enter my circle of relevance. That sits outside my circle of relevance. And then within the circle of relevance, you do a third circle, which is circle of permission. So, could it be relevant to people in my coaching world to know what my personal life is? Perhaps they want to build a better relationship and they want to see me and my husband on holiday somewhere. Maybe, but I don't choose to do that. That sits outside. So what is in the middle is authentic, it's relevant, and I've drawn a boundary. All right, I don't want to share. So that's what I would encourage people to do. Figure out who you are, figure out the bits of you that will help you progress your career, and make sure that you're not sharing things that you don't need to share.
How about you, Sarah? Any practical tips for building your personal brand you want to share?
No.
Okay, good.
That's it.
Good at that. Sorry, I will behave. Love. Yes, we're going to make that a thing. Circle of relevancy, circle of permission, consistency, SES. CS. It should be.
Sounds like you should, yeah.
Anyway, so what would I suggest? Consume data. So, Steve, you already said at the beginning that it was very interesting that it peaked when the Harvard Business Review piece and spiel. But consume data, get curious, learn stuff. So, according to the Citrix data, which we'll be sharing, won't be after, to attendees in the email list. You've got to now. I've said it, haven't I? No backing out.
We will do it, right?
You will do it, right?
Against your own will.
But yeah, so we've got people like Forbes, Harvard Business Review, Teachables who consume data. Research others as well. So have a little look on LinkedIn, out there on the interwebs. Have a look at who you respect and who you look up to and who you quite like. Consume their data, see what they're doing, see what kind of fits right with you. Remember, be aware of that ick. If there's anything that doesn't really fit right with you, you don't have to do it. Don't do that. Find something else. Find an alternative way of doing it. Understand your why, which I think we've already said at the beginning, but that is going to underpin everything, because once you know your why, your clarity, then you can plan everything around it. You can plan your content, you can decide how you're going to show up, what you're going to do. But then the biggest thing is just start posting, just start doing something. I am so glad that I did my first ever podcast, SEO SAS. Does anyone remember SEO SAS?
Woo!
Yeah, back in the day. Yes, Claire, you were on SEO SAS. Me and Hannah was a GLIJs, the SEO industry, which we felt was quite a fun way of coming across that. But I'm so glad that I decided to do that, because doing that very first thing has opened up so many doors. And me pestering Hannah and being like, do a podcast with me, doing a podcast with me. And she finally said yes. That has led me onto wonderful things like being sat here today, being freelance. So if there is something that you want to try, just do it. Now, if I listen back to the very first podcast episode that I'm going to do, I'm going to do the ICOM. I'm going to But I'm not saying that I don't regret doing it, because you have to start somewhere. You have to show up. You have to just get something out there, because that's the only way you're going to learn, improve, develop, and get better, yeah? So just whatever's in your head, get over yourself, but I don't mean it. That's the corporate sass Sarah trick a little bit. What I do about get over yourself, I just mean when you're first starting out, your audience is going to be smaller, so use that to your advantage and try stuff, because there's less people going to see it. and see what attracts, see what works, see what you like. Do more of the stuff that you want to do less of the stuff that you don't want to do. But you just got to try stuff. Like, don't regret not ever doing stuff. And 9 times out of 10, the thought of doing something is much scarier than the actual doing. I remember during my first talk of writing SEO, and I had all those pictures of, like, you stand on stage and my trousers fall down and my pants are on show, I trip up the stage and the stairs and all of that stuff. But you just got to try stuff. The fear is going to be there because you don't know what you don't know. Yeah? You've just got to give it a go, try it, and if you like it, do more of it. And the more that you do it, the better you're going to come.
Yeah, I think there's a real, like you said, the imposter syndrome you mentioned earlier, Sarah, there's that hill you want to get over when it comes to just starting a podcast or creating a blog or creating a YouTube channel, TikTok, whatever it is. And for me, there's a lot of that, you said getting the data, getting the research and all that kind of stuff. I am a big research nerd. Anyone who's ever heard me talk on a podcast before will know that. I gather all the data, I do all the prep work, all that kind of stuff. And it always involves looking at, what are other creators doing on this platform? And thinking about what platform is relevant as well. Do I want to be a YouTuber? Do I want to be a podcast? Do you want to be a TikToker? Do you want to be a blogger? All that kind of thing.
What do you want to be?
Who knows? When I grow up, I want to be corporate Sarah. That's what I want. But no, there's that element for me of seeing the people I've followed doing podcasts for years and years, particular inspirations, and also a lot of my decisions are influenced by what I don't like. I almost gear stuff through the negative rather than the positive. So I will find plenty of ick and be like, well, I definitely don't want to do that. I definitely don't want to talk about that thing or handle that in that way or do my intros in that way or write in this style or whatever. And so much of my sort of like choices and influences stuff are almost the negative. Like, well, I know what I don't want to do. So by process of elimination, this is what's left. And that's end up being the Jack that I present. I think a lot of people, most of you probably met me, at a conference or we've had a conversation on the podcast. Or you've heard me talk at these kind of things. I'm kind of me all the time. I swear a little bit less on the podcast than I do in real life. But apart from that, conversations with my family, my friends, whatever, work, is kind of podcast Jack as well. There is a little bit of presentation to it. I think there's an element there of blending that professional and personal brand side of things. Because obviously you use the phrase personal brand, and I think a lot of it comes from like, oh yeah, you got to turn yourself into a corporation or whatever. You got to make it Jack Schaber's Ward Incorporated or whatever. Like some.
You do read that in the world, describe.
Definitely do.
Would be subscribed to that? Of course.
No. 2 people went, oh yeah, no.
2 loyal fans,
Yeah.
advocates.
That's how every brand starts for Jackers. But yeah, I think there's an element there of like, you don't have to go in with that corporate kind of mindset. You don't even have to do anything different to what you're doing now, but just start sharing what you're doing. I know a lot of people, I've had conversations with the team at Candor, as a mission of mine this year is to highlight other members of our team at Candor who aren't on camera, who aren't doing talks and stuff like that, because I'm very aware people probably know Mark, they probably know also us, they probably, seen talks or podcasts or whatever, but actually highlighting a lot of people that are doing really great work in the team, but people have no idea who they are. So let's highlight the other members of the team and get them out there to start doing public appearances and podcasts and things like that. Like, I know our head of search, Tabby, has started appearing on panels. I've recorded a podcast with Tabby as well, and there's been that element of like, okay, let's start branching out a little bit and think about how we can expand that. And then having the conversation of like, so how am I coming across? What's going on here? I've never been on panel before. How does this work? I'm like, just have a chat like we would in the office, basically, and you'll be fine. I'll point a hammer at the 2 of us. We'll sit in 2 chairs, and very much like we're doing now, we just kind of chat and hold a microphone. And it ends up going out pretty well, because my style has always been conversational. Like I said, I type and talk how I talk in real life as well. And I think there is an element there of bringing that conversational kind of thing to things like podcasts, things like blogs and interviews and things like that. I've always had this element that's like, I need to really switch myself on if I'm going to interview for a job. Well, then you're not going to be like that all the time. So be aware of the authentic you can be without exhausting yourself and trying to keep yourself fully masked up all the time and presenting yourself as like aggressive corporate Jack or aggressive corporate Sarah.
No one needs that.
Exactly.
But the biggest thing that you can do is if you make other people feel at ease and they want to be around you and they want to spend time with you, that's when you get opportunities. That's when you get business. Because I'm very aware that there are other people that do what I can do. And I'm very aware of that. But what people can't do is build the relationships that I can with people. So the best superpower, infinity and beyond and all that, the best thing that you can do is to make people feel at ease, make people feel heard, or that they want to be around you, or they want to be in your presence. And the only way that you're going to do that, and this goes back to what we were saying right at the beginning, self-awareness, authenticity, clarity, doing all that stuff. And yeah, I think on the SEO Mindset podcast, we're very wary of making sure that our guests always feel really at ease and really welcome, because the best interview and the best times that you're going to get a stellar conversation is if someone feels really at ease. So this is a weird segue, but I got a little bit hooked and obsessed with Ruby Wax. Now, Ruby Wax she was very prominent in the 90s, and she just came across as this wacky interviewer who got her guests to do wacky things. But there was theory in her madness, a theory that it was all this wacky stuff was all to make a guest feel at ease, or make a guest feel like they were actually having fun, or they were having fun. And that's when people open up and have real conversations with you. So it's relevant in a podcast and an interview setting, but also when you're going for a job, when you're doing anything, make people feel at ease, make people feel they know you. Obviously, you've got your boundaries, and because we had this conversation when Willow came on the live podcast about authenticity, you don't have to show everything, and you can decide, okay, in corporate setting or podcasting setting, this is what I feel comfortable with. That's a conversation. But yeah.
And, we've been showing you Ruby Max. We've been talking a lot about how you post online or showing up at events and all of these sorts of things. But it's also offline. It's also where you're in an office environment. Are you the person that helps the new person who has joined the organization? Are you the person who puts your hand up for opportunities? So a lot of this conversation is about online, but it's also about the rest of your life as well.
Absolutely. I think we're about ready to open up the Q&A.
That's exciting.
Very exciting.
Do we have the catch box?
We do. I discharged. Cameron, maybe. I got a very wobbly hand from Cameron there. If not, we'll use my microphone. I guess we'll find out. Oh, we'll use my microphone.
That microphone.
I'm just going to throw it across. Hey, I'll get up and start passing my transfers. Does anyone have a question or a story?
As a reminder, every question you get, it's very heavy, so to pull in all that knowledge, hang on.
I even pass you a copy of SEO in 2025.
Every question, yes, one of these. Thank you, Majestic.
Oh, do I see you over there? Yeah, doing that. I'm coming to you. And you pass the mic over.
Thanks so much for the microphone. Oh, wow. So it was real. So thanks so much. Thank you. So my name is Arthur, and my question is, well, first of all, I did a mistake. I belong to Gen Z, and as the event is all about personal branding, I did a big mistake. I didn't invest in my personal branding until 2 years ago, and since I started doing that, my career completely changed for the good. I work with these wonderful guys here. I work with beautiful companies. But until that moment, I was completely stuck, professionally speaking. So I developed the agency, as I said, and I see our problems firsthand. We have an uncertain future. The market is crowded. But I truly believe that building a personal brand is going to change the career of everybody. Still, I see a huge resistance from the people of my age, around 28, 30, 25, 24. I struggle to convince them about the power of personal branding. So if you should give 3 reasons to convince these people about the importance of building their personal brands, starting probably tomorrow, and it could be on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, wherever they want, which these 3 reasons would be?
And thank you very much for the answer. Boss, cut your hand. Say hello, Mike. Talking into my little mic here, that sounds.
I'll go back to this one. For me, I think the big thing is everyone is a brand. And I think Steve touched on it here, of like, especially Americans seem to be very good at just being a thing. They're influencers or whatever. And whether you like it or not, people are talking about you and you have a reputation, as Tazmin, you said earlier, like, that's what we used to call it back in the day. That's your brand, whether you like it or not. And you will build a reputation in your professional circles, in your personal circles. So tough, so the people who don't want to do it, tough, you kind of have to. That's how I see it, in the, like, if you're posting on social media, if you're working and having conversations with people in the industry, you are building a reputation, you are building a brand, and everyone, as gross as it sounds and as icky as it sounds, there's the ick again, everyone is kind of a brand, whether you like it or not.
Sorry.
Last but say, Tazmin.
I was asked, so you mentioned that there's a level of uncertainty. And if you are building your own personal brand, you're taking ownership. So you're having the ability to then influence, control to some degree, any means. Ownership is so important in your career, whether in personal branding, personal development, and whatever. Why would you let someone else, be it somebody that you're working with, or just take hold of your life and influence as much as you can? I didn't do it until I was, far into my career. I made the mistake of being in the tech world, but being really, really interested in personal development. So I would help HR, and I would run workshops, and I was do all of these things, hoping that somebody would say, "Oh, husband, you're much better at coaching than you are at SEO. Why did you become a coach?" And until I took ownership, you didn't happen. So don't wait for anyone to give you what you want. Take ownership and say.
Why wouldn't you as well? Because I think if you work on your personal brand, you can make yourself more intentional. So as soon as you figure out, okay, this is my personal brand, or this is what I stand for, this is what I want to do, it helps you then know what you want to post and when you want to post it. So something that I'm getting more comfortable with is sharing stuff that actually matter to me. So there has been times where something comes up on LinkedIn or Instagram and I really agree with it and I want to share it, but I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, but that's not SEO, that's not podcast, or people think I'm ranty, people think I'm this. But actually, I have to quiet that voice and be like, no, this is my plan, this is intentional. By me posting more of the stuff that I want to be known for, or that I'm passionate about, or that I agree with, that's only going to help attract the right people and repel people that aren't right for me. So my thing is, why would you do it? Why wouldn't you? Because everyone's posted anyway. It gives you structure and it makes you be more intentional, and it really opens doors to whatever you want to do, like with a reason. But yeah, opportunities will come your way.
Any more questions about stories? Anybody want to share? A couple of hands, lovely. Bring up, and then go for it. That's right. Oh, yeah.
It is up to you, thank you, but isn't it? To be please.
Hi, yeah, I have a question. So, Tazzy, you talked about introducing some of your personal life into what we're talking about online. How do you balance that out so that you're not confusing your audience? So, for example, if you've got lots of interests and you've got lots of things that you want to talk about, how do you decide to kind of focus it in a way that's going to help you build that ground rather than you talk about like kind of stuff at the dark. So generally, I'll ask myself, is this going to help the person that I'm writing it for? If it isn't, then why am I doing it? I have some lean no-nos. I will never post pictures of the children or the grandchildren and my husband. That never appears. The other question I asked myself, especially like in video content, that if my children saw this, would they be embarrassed?
If yes, you're doing it right. That's parenting done right. The kids are embarrassed. What's the point?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm teasing up too.
Because if when I have longer, I think they see that postage. Is it something that's going to make you smile, or will they, will they learn something for it? Will they value it? Is it valuable? Is the big thing. So yes, I talk about the kitchens. I like create kitchens to make. Give an example. I would buy a LinkedIn post back a kitchen because that's about doing it. Everything is.
What did you learn about B2B marketing from cleaning your kitchen? I think
There's always a lesson. I will say the kitchen, the Airbnb, Crystal and Tash would agree. Very, very clean. Good guess.
There
You
you go.
don't see a question. Yeah. Did you? Oh.
Hang on, you get a book. Let me just so it's a two-hand job.
Careful. Build your reputation one sentence at a time. Sorry, McDowell.
I've got to be.
Sliding Sarah strikes again.
Thank you so much.
I have a question for me. Imagine that something inspires you and you want to write about it and share with people because you love to share. But it doesn't resonate. What do you do next? How do you frame it so that it's like your personal brand? You try it and make it get it to the events.
So maybe that was about reframing something if you're inspired by it. And like I said, a lot of that for me is taking the things I don't like and basically doing the opposite of that. When I see somebody being like super over the top, like it's a really nerdy thing. But video editing is now a big part of my life, and I'm now super aware of it. And super choppy, quick cuts and editing in videos drives me absolutely mad. Where you're literally like cutting off a tiny little thing, just chopping up sentences. I'm going to try and do things in a single take, or talk at my own pace and handle it in my own way, because I find that really annoying. So I almost like have a conscious thing of the things I don't want to do. Even if you are inspired by something, I could take that and do it in my own way. What makes it your way? What is the positive thing you could add to it? And what is the negative thing you kind of want to take out? For me, and being like, I really like what this person is talking about, but I don't like the way they're presenting it. This feels like the classic, this being could have been an email kind of thing. Can you reformat it in a way? Does it make more sense for it to be a 30-second quick thing on a social media post, or is it better served as an hour-long conversation on a podcast, or a blog post, or an entire book that you have to write, whatever? I think tackling that in different ways and kind of thinking about the different formats. For me, there's a big discussion about create once, distribute forever. I know Ross Simmons wrote a book about this, about even having one conversation on a podcast or writing a book or whatever it is, you can then turn that into little bits and pieces you can carry on sharing. And people build entire brands around that kind of thing of, I made one thing and now I have spun that off into loads of other things and turned that into my own little moment or little section or whatever. Do you guys have any thoughts about reframing? You're good at reframing, Tazmin.
Oh, well, actually, when I write it, just write it. I think, especially if it shows you see they're building trust online and it's showing most of you that you're happy to share, then just do it. And then sometimes we worry too.
I do have to agree. And yeah, and I think kind of what I was saying before, you've just got to get the confidence of just doing it and trying things, because you'll quickly learn what is working, what feels nice, and how we can reframe it. So I think there's a lot of us that are overthinkers. So put your hand up if you think that you're an overthinker. Right, yeah. I think that's what makes us good at SEO, right? We overthink everything. We're good at everything. But sometimes you just got to go for it. And it's okay if something doesn't quite sit right or hit right. Just don't do it again. But we talked about this on the podcast about it's okay to fail and have the courage to fail, because every time you fail, that's a learning. And we see failure as a negative, as a thing that's bad, but it's only bad if you don't learn anything by it and keep doing it. Like, if I keep scolding myself because I'm constantly touching this hot pan, then that's bad, isn't it? It's possible, so it's possible. But yeah, you've just got to, it's okay to fail, and that you need to have the courage in failing, because every time you fail, there is a lesson that can be learned so you can improve a bit next time. I hear so many entrepreneurial stories about how many times they failed to get where they are, and I think sometimes we always see the best version of someone, or someone's best self, or someone's great success, but we don't see everything that's come before. So it's having the courage to just try stuff, and it's okay to fail. And if you're at your beginning of your career or personal branding or reputation building, you're going to have smaller audience anyway, so it's okay. And be a bit more risky and be okay to fail. So does that answer your question? Yeah. Cool.
Any other questions? Anybody else want to get a book? I see Ashley at the back there. I'll run over. Grab a book now.
I'm already. Anybody would like.
Hey, there we go. Ashley's already in the bus. Give in. You can sign it.
I just wanted to get your guys' perspective on crisis management. So let's say you put a post out and it has totally the wrong impact to what you wanted it to happen. You've done it in the best way with the best intention, but it's gone wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
Run, hide, go to new countries, get a new passport. Now, so how I would answer that question is be courageous enough to own up to that mistake. So if something has gone wrong, and whatever that is, make sure that you're getting comments or feedback. Don't be afraid to respond and say sorry and sort of own that mistake that you have made. It's sort of, yeah, so apologise, but also decide, okay, what steps are you going to put in place so you don't do that again? But we're humans at the end of the day. I don't think there's any AI in the audience just yet, but of course,
technology.
maybe. But we're all humans. We're all messy. We're going to make mistakes, and I see where it goes wrong when someone's made a mistake is if they get on the defense mode, or they bury their head, or they don't want to do anything, and that's when it makes it worse, because you're not addressing it. You're not putting your hands up and saying, "Look, I'm sorry." There is a right and wrong way to apologise. I've learned this the hard way. So never go with, "I'm sorry you're feeling that way," because that's a rubbish apology. Or sorry that, because you're kind of saying this is a you problem then. But yeah, just take ownership of it, address it, apologise in the right way, but put steps in place so it doesn't happen again. That's how I would address them.
I'm going to go slightly philosophical. There's personal brand that you show the world, but then there's a personal brand that's internal as well. Who are you? So you put a post down and it's backfired. You didn't mean it to be like that, but it has. So in that moment, who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? Because that again, going back to that internal offensive brand. And if your answer is, I'm going to direct contact that person and apologize, do that. If it is to show up online and apologize, do that. If it is, sometimes I've been in family situations where I've said sorry, but at that time, after that, it's time to walk away because anything I was saying is just fueling it. And it's the more you know who you are, the more you know how you're going to react to certain situations. You're building such a strong core then by always asking yourself, okay, who do I want to be here? How do I want to act? What character am I building? And it's a bit like, so my daughter's sprang paddleboards. Name's Katie. I was watching them. I said, Katie, what makes you really good at being paddleboarder? And she said, when you've got a strong core. What makes you good at life is when you've got a strong core and you know who you are. And that when you know who you are, you don't need external validation. You don't need anyone to tell you how to do things. Because you get feedback and you learn. It's always a process of learning. But life, brands, work, whatever, the ultimate is to build you, build your business.
I think putting crisis in perspective as well. Again, I mentioned my wife earlier. She's been a nurse for 10 years. So I would always come home and be like, oh, the website went down. Our core web vitals are only 30. Oh, no. And then she's like, 3 people died today. That was a good day. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's kind of put it into perspective a little bit. I guess I'll shut up about my clicks going down this month or whatever. We build websites. We work on websites. We're creating content. It's not the end of the world if it goes wrong. Even if you are, you post the wrong thing, you have to, have that awkward call with a client or whatever it is. I'm going to quote someone else that's not Jeff Bezos. I'm going to quote a pro wrestler. You'll appreciate this, Ashley. I'm going to quote CM Punk. If you do something publicly, the apology needs to be as loud as the disrespect. So if you cause a stir, you do one of those what's the phrase? Like the unhinged social media post things that ends up tanking your brand. We've all seen Ryanair do mad stuff on Twitter, and then you go to the website and it's Ryanair. Okay, you're not doing weird stuff on your website at all. Interesting. But I've definitely had conversations where clients have gone off and done another thing. Okay, we had a whole content strategy. We're doing this thing. This is the brand we're building for you guys. We're thinking about, your topical authority and your brand authority, all that kind of stuff. We just thought we saw a trending thing, we went off and did this thing anyway. I was like, okay, that doesn't time with anything. That's kind of undermining a bunch of things we've already been doing. And if you do mess up in public, you kind of need to address it in public as well, whether that's, from a brand perspective, from a company perspective, from a personal perspective as well. And you need to be aware of the audience you're talking to and who you would then need to kind of apologize to, if that makes sense.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was awesome for her.
Any other questions? Or we got just a couple those hands?
Customer mindset. Okay.
Yours.
I'm going to go for the easier access one.
Very sticky.
Very sticky.
We have about 8-10 more books, so 10 more.
I would like to ask how to be clear in messaging when you are on a scale of the potential and you have very diverse booking experience and very diverse.
So just to confirm, your question is, when you've got some bits and bobs going on, how do you be clear? How do you find clarity? Jack, Tazmin, do you want to go first?
Are you able on a missile? Yes. I work in aviation, emergency medical services, e-commerce, sports, football club, and advertising agency. And all these publishers were very different. Articles of stories, very good stories that is very difficult to
frame myself even when I'm trying the year I was trying to find a new job, and so many recruiters, when I was showing high curriculum, then they asked me like, "But who are you? What are you?" And I was feel like I'm unable to define myself. I need like 10 rows.
Oh, so it is a tough one. I once applied for a job and the interviewer thought I had cut and pasted CVs together because he didn't believe that was all in me. I'd gone a catering business, I'd done working developments, cracking at a Java development. And it is hard, and I think if you're able to translate the skills that you have that lend themselves to the role that you're applying for, that can help her. And also for them to be able to own those roles rather than being not embarrassed about them, but every single role taught you something. Everything has created this tapestry of who you are. And instead of nurturing about how you explain that to someone, you start explaining it to yourself first, and embracing that and knowing that all of that is giving you the experiences that you've got, and know that that richness will be valuable in every goal. That club action, that internal action, would help you show up differently in every scene that you're in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but still I'm able to.
I've got something to add. So what I would ask you is, what is it that you want more of? So when you are showing up in social, when you're working to a personal brand, what is the one thing that you either want more of, or you want to be known for, or what is the thing that you want to put out there? Because once you understand that, then you can bring in, so all the different experience that you've had in the previous roles, that's when you can cherry pick, or this from aviation, right, made sense to post here, this from here, this from here, but you've got to get super clear. So for me, as an example, I want to get more podcast clients. I want to be the go-to podcast coach. That is what I want to do. That's what I want to show us online. That's what I want to attract, get into my universe. So what I can do is, because I know that is my plan, that is my vision, from all of the past experience, so of running and hosting and launching podcasts, monetizing podcasts, working through a podcast hosting platform, speaking on stage at podcast conferences, working in SEO, lean on the radio, right? All these things are valid experience once I make them valid for that point or that one thing that I want to show up for, if that makes sense.
I think what you want to be known for is the thing that it really resonates with me. I did a kind of a little experiment, an exercise with my friends and family 5-6 years ago, probably, where I was like, when you think of me, sum me up in a sentence. Like, will you describe me as the podcast guy, or I don't know, whatever. That mostly will end up coming back, surprise, surprise. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I do a lot of podcasts at this point. I think I was hosting 3 different podcasts at that point. And it hadn't really occurred to me until I actually sat down with other people, and they were, I think it was on a WhatsApp chat, and was getting various messages like, oh, you do podcasts, or oh, you're really into video games, or whatever. Some of it was personal, some of it was professional, but taking a step back and having a conversation with the people that know you, can be colleagues, can be friends, and then does that align with what you think of yourself? So if you want to push and move towards more aviation work or less aviation work, do people think of you as, oh, the person that works in aviation, or do they think of you as the person that works in this industry or pushes boundaries in this way, or are you the person that highlighting diverse voices of podcasts through your coaching, finding, and again, I guess, relevant to SEO, actually finding that niche. And as much as we're kind of at the tail end of the niche side of content for SEO, it seems, I think there's definitely an element of kind of narrowing things down a bit and not just being like, I'm the podcast guy because there are a million, as we mentioned, all podcasters are straight white dudes like me. They're nothing interesting.
Don't all wear fabulous shirts.
That's what I need. I'd say, yeah, you got to wear a cool shirt. That's how you get differentiate between all the others white dudes who do podcasts. But genuinely, like, what do people think about you outside of the room is one thing, and then what you feel about yourself and how much do they line up with each other. So I would think of myself as like, I think of myself as like humor first. Every conversation I have will have jokes in it. And a lot of people are like, you are not funny. You think you're funny, but you need to stop trying to be funny. It's like, okay, right, maybe I need to reframe that, kind of understand that. So do your goals align with what other people think about you and what you think about yourself? How much, again, going back to the Ikigai thing, about how much those circles cross over and how that all kind of works together. How much do you want to niche down? Do you want to go to an entire industry's worth of stuff, or is there a really, really specific thing? So Sarah being a podcast coach, but you want to be one that specifically highlights different voices and brings diversity.
I will work with rights men. Just to put out.
Hello.
Yeah, exactly. Tazmin.
Have you had a chance to do this? No. I'm not just
Personal delivery.
There you go.
So go through the exercise and ask yourself, okay, this is what I want. And which of my skills line up with it? What skills can I leverage? And also then, that's your goal. What is your strategy of getting to that? And then what actions? With so many people want something. I want this goal. And then they fall short on the strategy and the actions. They all have to be aligned. So then you talk about that, you speak about that, you see those not like that. I never post about my catering business. But I mean, I did one post.
I didn't know you had a catering business for ages. We've known each other for years, and I had no idea.
But catering business, I ran a good tea school, I had curry club.
I'm learning this by now with the rest of you.
But it doesn't align with what I'm trying to chase now, so I don't really talk about it. And then I just get worried that people ask me to make a curry and dine it.
Okay, I think that's time for one more question. Anybody got to help? A couple of
It's your turn, Jack.
It's my turn.
Prefer it, but
Henry, what copy of SEO in 2025? Copyright, okay. Book.
If also, just before the question, because we have got other copies, is what, throw them up in the air, grab and catch, that's health and safety, that's fly, yeah. Sorry, anyway, continue.
Thank you. Who, and this can be somebody you know, could be something famous, or both, if you like. Who do you think has got their personal brand absolutely spot on? Did you look up, do you think you're they got it right?
A tough question. It has been thinking. Sarah's anyone straight to mind? Any podcasters root fruit to mind? Tazmin, do I?
The name escapes me. I'm going to blame my age. But yes, an individual started a charity called Mary's Meals. And there's a book called The Shed That Caused Amelia. And he started off, and there was a disaster. So he spoke to his village and said, I'm going to hire a van and go deliver the goods there. They got goods and they went to deliver it to the disaster. Came back, it's meant to be a border. Came back with more goods, so they did that again and again and again. And then that turns into a charity of so many different arts. And one book once that was most used in is called Mary's Meals. And Mary's Meals, what they do is that they feed a meal to a child in an unfortunate situation in different countries at school, because then parents would send their children to school. And that is where your character and reputation and a brand as purpose aligns so beautifully. So that's something that I really respect in life.
Somebody who inspired me to start podcasting one enough is a guy called Greg Miller. He runs a company called Kinda Funny, and they're like a podcast and YouTube channel and stuff. And it was always the welcoming environment, and that's something we wanted to craft for the podcast as well here. It's the engagement with the fans, being active in communities, all that kind of stuff that really inspired me to do what I do. When it comes to, see a comment on YouTube, or you meet somebody in person, actually have a conversation rather than kind of big-feeding people and all that kind of stuff. It's not the biggest channel in the world. They don't have like millions and millions of subscribers or anything like that, but it feels like you're part of something that matters. That's always the kind of thing I wanted to craft when it comes to whether it's this kind of thing of building this community, whether what we're doing with Search Norwich or Search Canada or what I do with Sequelizers. There's always that element of, I'm never going to be the biggest in the world, but there's a way I can kind of engage with the community and make people feel heard, feel a part of something. And that is massively inspired by what Greg and the guys at Kind of Funny do. It feels like a nice little tight-knit community. And even then, they've gone full-time. They made the transition from like big full-time jobs and were able to go off. Even though they don't have millions and millions of subscribers or listeners or whatever, is the kind of community that supports them with things like Patreon and all that kind of thing that allows them to do what they do. That's always been my conscious thing of like, the numbers don't matter at the end of the day. If you have the right people there to support you and the right kind of things in your community, that's always the kind of thing I kind of strive for. So yeah, if you want to check out pop culture stuff, Kind of Funny is my fave.
I'm going to be that person. This is I aspire to look up to you too.
Oh.
I'm not just saying it for that. There was some seriousness in that.
But is it because I'm tall?
Super tall. You're very good at always putting out all the banners because you...
Don't I? Yes, Baroness is tall enough to reach to the band.
Exactly. No, that's what everyone's going to say. Stop doing it to me. You and Don. I wasn't quite
Yeah, just came out Anna's.
Sorry, I got derailed. That's why. I didn't say what.
Go on, Sarah.
Like, it's interesting because when you first asked that question, Arish Abriali really came into my mind because she went out and created a community and an audience because she felt like she needed to create that to feel belonging and that she was part of the community that saw her and she felt comfortable in and all of that lovely stuff. So obviously the community I'm talking about is the marine tech community. And it's just phenomenal to see. She is so authentic. She shows up. She calls stuff out, and she's actually starting to make a change. So a big thing that I think with the Reach is, yes, she's made a very inclusive, welcoming space for women in tech SEO, but she's also started that conversation about getting people paid for speaking. But everything she seems to do, so she launched, did a book, and that instantly had such a wonderful following and people, how can I get my hands on this book? I've got to support. And because she is so, I see me just someone who is very self-aware. She knows what she wants to do. She knows why she's showing up. She knows how she's going to show up. And because she knows that and she's confident, she knows how to attract the people. So whatever she does, even if she started selling T-shirts, I think the community would buy them. Do you know what? That's the point. When you are so authentic and you know who you are, it doesn't matter what you're selling because you've got that fandom in a weird way. People but they also want to support you. They want to see you succeed. Like I'm part of the Women in Tech SEO community. Whenever I see the amazing numbers across the globe, or whenever there's a milestone, in a weird way I feel proud, and I think that's part of it. And I'm interested in what you would say.
Yeah, because you feel connected, you feel heart. It's not just a community from the namesake, you build parts of that community, and you feel that you're being on a journey with that. Especially, I remember when Narush first started her first news talking about before lockdown, and she was asking speakers, and I said, well, I've got a talk, and I'm going to be deliberate by like it's that space to practice it. And the way she was then is the way she is now. And that's capital.
type of
Reputation.
Yeah. Think that wraps us up? Or you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to go.
Oh, okay.
Thinking at me.
We're gonna or boo or something. Is that boss? No, but we do have the route until 10 o'clock, and it's now about 20 past 9. So you've got time to get more drinks, get more food, all that good stuff.
If you want a book,
Please come and get copies of SEO 2025.
or a picture, people really to follow, because people might skedaddle. Be really good to get a picture. But also,
oh, hi.
Yeah. Oh, no, we're back. Here we go. I can't hear what they're saying, so your mic's back. Use your mic.
hello. Oh, I am back. So what is wonderful is every time we do the live podcast, it just gets bigger, doesn't it? And it seems to be such a big time when people want to go and come along, which is lovely. And of course, we said answered thank yous to our wonderful sponsors. Right, so just another shout out.
Shout out to Sub Bob. I see you guys in the back there. Hey, also there. Shout out to Jesty. We'll see you.
Active advancements is the standardization in the show.
We do want to go bigger in October. So if you would like to sponsor, come and talk to us.
I'm hoping for potentially a bigger room next time because this is quite full.
We're in the auditorium one.
Yeah. We'll take over the writing centre. Yeah, Nish. Easy, right? Yes. So that is us wrapping up. If you want to come and grab a card and follow the podcast, all that kind of stuff. Crystal is going to take a photo of the crowd so we can get you all.
Don't
this group picture.
Do you want jazz hands? Do you want some line across? Look, how do you want?
I'm sure Crystal will point us the right direction.
Okay, get it.
Nice. Well, that wraps us up. Thank you, everybody.